Hello everyone, welcome back to another Magic the Gathering deck video. Today I'm going to be showing you my green and red commander deck using Onmath Locus of Rage from Battle for Zendikar. Let's take a look at the deck. Alright, first off is our commander, Omnath Locus of Rage. He costs 3 colorless, 2 red, 2 green. He is a 5/5 legendary elemental creature. He also has landfall, so whenever a land enters a battlefield under your control, you put a 5/5 red and green elemental creature token onto the battlefield. Whenever Omnath Locus of Rage or another elemental you control dies, Omnath deals 3 damage to target creature or player. We're going to move into our lands now. I have one Cinderglade. It taps for either red or green, and it comes into the battlefield tapped unless you control 2 or more basic lands. I have one Evolving Wilds. Tap it, sacrifice it, search your library for a basic land, put it onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle your library. I have a few landfall spells in this deck, as well as Omnath himself, so this will help landfall trigger multiple times per turn. I have 18 forests, just tap for green. I have one Gruul Turf. It enters a battlefield tapped. When it enters the battlefield, return a land you control to its owner's hand, and it taps for green and red. I have 9 mountains, for red mana. Have one Reliquary Tower. You have no maximum hand size. You can tap it to add one colorless to your mana pool. We have one Rugged Highlands. Enters the battlefield tapped. You gain a life when it comes into play, and it adds red or green to your mana pool. We have one Temple of Abandon. Enters the battlefield tapped. When it enters the battlefield, you can scry one. So you look at the top card of your library. You can either leave it there or put it on the bottom, and it also taps for red or green. We have one Terrain Generator. Taps for colorless, or you can pay 2 colorless and tap it to put a basic land card from your hand onto the battlefield tapped. Another nice way to pull some landfall out. And we have one Terramorphic Expanse. Sacrifice it, search your library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle your library. Another good way to get landfall to trigger multiple times. We do have one Planeswalker in this deck. We have Domri Raid. Costs 1 colorless, 1 red, 1 green. Enters with 3 loyalty. His +1 is look at the top card of your library. If it's a creature card, you may reveal it and put it into your hand. -2, target creature you control fights another target creature. And his -7, his ultimate ability is you get an emblem with creatures you control have double strike, trample, hexproof, and haste. We're going to move into our artifacts here. I have one Bow of Nylea, 1 colorless, 2 green. Attacking creatures you control have Death Touch. It also has the ability to pay 1 and a green, tap the bow to choose one of these options. You can put a 1/1 counter on target creature. It can do 2 damage to target creature with flying. You can gain 3 life, or you can put up to 4 cards from your graveyard on the bottom of your library in any order. We have one Explorer Scope, costs 1 colorless. Equipped creature attacks. Look at the top card of your library. If it's a land card, you may put it onto the battlefield tapped. It has 1 and it costs 1 to equip. We have one General's Regalia, 3 colorless, and it has the ability to pay 3 colorless. The next time your source of your choice would do damage to you this turn, it does that damage to a target creature you control instead. So if you have elementals out, you can redirect damage to your elementals, triggering Omnath's ability for when elementals die to deal damage to target creatures or players. We have one Hammer of Perforos, 1 colorless, 2 green or 2 red. Creatures you control have haste. Also has the ability to pay 2 and a red to sacrifice a land to put a 3/3 colorless Golem enchantment artifact token onto the battlefield. I'm mostly just using this to get the haste ability, not really planning on sacrificing a lot of lands. We have one Lightning Coils, 3 colorless. It says whenever a non-token creature you control is put into a graveyard from play, put a charge counter on Lightning Coils. Beginning of your upkeep, if it has 5 or more charge counters on it, remove all of them, and then put that many 3/1 red elemental creature tokens with haste into play, remove them from the game at the end of the turn. And we have one Sword of the Animist. 2 colorless, equipped creature gets +1/+1. When it attacks, you may search your library for a basic land card and put it onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle your library. Cost 2 to equip. Into our creatures, we have one Anok Guide, 1 and a green for a 1/1 with two options. You can either put a 1/1 counter on it, or you can search your library for a basic land card, reveal it, and then shuffle your library and put that card on top of it. We have 1 Apocalypse Hydra. X red and green for a 0/0 enters a battlefield with X 1/1 counters on it. If it's 5 or more, it enters the battlefield with an additional X 1/1 counters. You can also pay 1 and a red to remove a counter to deal 1 damage to target creature or player. 1 Avatar of the Resolute for 2 green. It's a 3/2 with reach and trample. Enters a battlefield with a 1/1 counter on it for each other creature you control with a 1/1 counter on it. So this thing can get pretty strong if you have a bunch of creatures with counters. 1 Cytoplast Rootkin. 2 colorless, 2 green. Has Graph 4, so it enters the battlefield with 4 1/1 counters on it. When another creature enters the battlefield, you may move a 1/1 counter from this creature to that creature. See, this enters the battlefield. Put a 1/1 counter on each other creature you control with a 1/1 counter on it, and 2 colorless to move a counter from target creature you control onto this creature. We have 1 Forgotten Ancient for 3 and a green. It's a 0/3. Whenever a player casts a spell, you may put a 1/1 counter on Forgotten Ancient. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may move any number of counters from Forgotten Ancient onto other creatures. We have 1 Grove Rumbler, 2 colorless, red and green. It's a 3/3 with trample. It also has landfall, so whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, it gets 2/2 until the end of turn. We have 1 Hamletback Goliath, 6 in a red for a 6/6. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield, you may put X 1/1 counters on this creature, where X is that creature's power. We have 1 Hellkite Hatchling, 2 colorless, red and green for a 2/2 with Devour 1. So as it enters the battlefield, you can sack any number of creatures. This creature enters the battlefield with that many 1/1 counters. It also has Flying and Trample if it uses its Devour ability. We have 1 Hydra Omnivore, 4 colorless, 2 green. It's an 8/8. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, it deals that much damage to each other player as well. So this is a good way to lock the board down, because if one player lets this through, it's going to damage everybody else. And especially if this thing is pumped up and has like trample or anything like that, it's pretty much going to get through almost every time, depending on how strong it is. We have 1 Jaughty Offshoot, 1 green for a 0/3 defender. Landfall, when a land enters the battlefield, you gain 1 life. We have 1 Llanowar Elves for 1 green for a 1/1. Has the ability to tap to add green to your mana pool. Good card early on. It's a 1/1 for 1, which is good, and you can also ramp some mana with this guy as well. We have 1 McKinney Slide Runner, 1 in a red for a 2/1 with trample. Has landfall. When it enters the battlefield, it gets +1/+1 until the end of turn. We have 1 Managorger Hydra, 2 in a green for a 1/1 with trample. And whenever a player casts a spell, put a 1/1 counter on Managorger Hydra. We have 1 Mina and Den Wildborn, 2 colorless, green and red for a 4/4. You may play an additional land on your turns. You also can pay red and green, return a land you control to its owner's hand to give a target creature trample until the end of turn. We have 1 Nemesis Immortals, 4 colorless, 2 green for a 5/5. It costs 1 less to cast for each creature card in your graveyard. Also has Monstrosity 5 for 7 and 2 green. Costs 1 less to activate for each creature card in your graveyard. Basically, if it isn't monstrous, you put 5 1/1 counters on it and it becomes monstrous. We have 1 Nessian Wild Ravager, 4 colorless, 2 green for a 6/6 with Tribute 6. So when you play it, somebody can put 6 1/1 counters on it. And if it enters the battlefield without Tribute, you may have it fight another target creature. We have 1 Nylea, God of the Hunt, 3 in a green for a 6/6 with Indestructible, and as long as your devotion to green is less than 5, Nylea isn't a creature. Other creatures you control have trample, and for 3 in a green, target creature gets +2/+2 until the end of turn. We have 1 Outland Colossus, 3 colorless, 2 green for a 6/6 with Renown 6. So when it deals combat damage to a player, if it isn't renowned, it gets 6 1/1 counters, and it can't be blocked by more than 1 creature. We have 1 Primordial Hydra, costs X and 2 green. It enters the battlefield with X 1/1 counters on it, and at the beginning of your upkeep, double the number of 1/1 counters on Primordial Hydra, and it has trample as long as it has 10 or more counters on it. We have 1 Perforos, God of the Forge. He is a 6/5 with Indestructible for 3 in a red. As long as your devotion to red is less than 5, it isn't a creature. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, It deals 2 damage to each opponent. You can also pay 2 in a red to give creatures you control +1/+0 until the end of turn. We have 1 Rot Shambler, 1 in a green for a 1/1. Whenever another creature you control dies, put a 1/1 counter on Rot Shambler. We have 1 Savage Ventmaw, 4 colorless, green or red and green for a 4/4 with flying. Whenever it attacks, you can add 3 red, 3 green to your mana pool. Until the end of turn, this mana doesn't empty from your mana pool as steps and phases end. We have 1 Scourge of Skull of Vale, 2 in a green for a 0/0 with trample, and it enters the battlefield with 2 1/1 counters on it. You can sacrifice another creature to put a number of 1/1 counters on it that are equal to the sacrificed creature's toughness. We have 1 Servant of the Scale for 1 green. It's a 0/0. Enters the battlefield with a 1/1 counter on it, and when it dies, you can remove the counters, any number or all the 1/1 counters off of this creature and put them onto a different creature. We have 1 Snapping Gnarlid for 1 in a green. It's a 2/2 with landfall, so when a land enters the battlefield under your control, it gets +1/+1 until the end of turn. We have 1 Stampeding Elk Herd for 3 colorless, 2 green for a 5/5 with Formidable. So whenever it attacks, if creatures you control have total power 8 or greater, creatures you control gain trample until the end of turn. We have 1 Tuskguard Captain for 2 in a green. It's a 2/3 with Outlast. Outlast cost of just 1 red and tap. Put a 1/1 counter on this creature. You can only do that as a sorcery. And each creature with a 1/1 counter on it also has trample. We have 1 Xenagos, God of Rebels, 3 colorless, green and red for a 6/5 with Indestructible. As long as your devotion to red and green is less than 7, Xenagos isn't a creature. And at the beginning of combat on your turn, another target creature you control gets haste and gets +X/+X until the end of turn, where X is that creature's power. A good way to really just buff up a creature super strong and have it basically swing for a ton of damage. We have 1 Young Pyromancer, 1 in a red for a 2/1. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, put a 1/1 red elemental token onto the battlefield. And finally, in our creatures, we have 1 Zendikar Incarnate. 2 colorless, red and green. Zendikar Incarnate's power is equal to the number of lands you control, and its toughness is 4. We're now going to move into our enchantments, and you're going to see how this deck starts getting really strong with some of these enchantments. So, first up, we have Doubling Season. 4 in a green. If an effect would put 1 or more tokens onto the battlefield under your control, it puts twice that many tokens onto the battlefield instead. If an effect would place 1 or more counters on a permanent you control, it places twice that many of those counters on that permanent instead. So, if something says enters a battlefield with a 1/1 counter, it enters with 2. Like for example, with Primordial Hydra, you pay 5 for X, so it'll basically be a 5/5. This would make that a 10/10. The next turn it will double to a 20/20. However, that would double then again to a 40/40, and so on. Next up, we have Elemental Mastery, 3 in a red. Enchant creature. Enchanted creature has tap, put X 1/1 red elemental creatures or creature tokens with haste into play, where X is the creature's power. Remove them from the game at the end of turn. So like attach this to my commander, tap him to put 5 1/1 elementals into play. If Purphoros is out, he's going to deal 10 damage to players. Next up, we have Exploration. 1 green. You may play an additional land on each of your turns. Nice way to get some good landfall, and especially if you're with Onmath, you can get double the amount of tokens you would by placing an additional land. Next up, we have Familiar Ground. 2 in a white. Each creature you control can't be blocked by more than 1 creature. Works really, really well with trample creatures. We have 1 Flame Shadow Conjuring for 3 in a red. Whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, you can pay red. If you do, put a token onto the battlefield that's a copy of that creature. Gains haste, exile it at the beginning of the next end step. We have 1 Impact Tremors, 1 in a red. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, this deals 1 damage to each opponent. We have 1 Overgrowth, 2 in a green. Enchanted land is tap for mana. Its controller adds 2 green to their mana pool. We have 1 Parallel Lives, 3 in a green. If an effect would put 1 or more tokens onto the battlefield under your control, it puts twice that many tokens onto the battlefield instead. So you double up on this with Doubling Season, basically getting 4 times as many tokens. Next up, we have Perilous Forays, 3 colorless, 2 green. Has the ability to pay colorless to sack a creature. Search your library for a land card with a basic land type and put it onto the battlefield tapped. Then shuffle your library. Excellent combo with Omnath. So basically, you have Omnath out, you get an elemental with him, uh, or doubling season or perilous forays, you're going to get multiples. Sack one of them, have Omnath deal 3 damage to something, and just repeat this over and over again. Next up, we have Retreat to Kazandu, 2 colorless and a green landfall. When land enters the battlefield, you get to choose one of these options: put a 1/1 counter on target creature, or gain 2 life. Obviously, if you have doubling season, you're going to be putting 2 counters on something. Next up, we have Warstorm Surge, 5 in a red. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, it deals damage equal to its power to target creature or player. Super deadly with Omnath and the Perilous Forays and Doubling Season. So basically, you're going to be getting, let's say, 8 elementals off of 1 land drop. You're going to be doing, and those are 5/5 elementals. You can destroy a player with just this combo right here. Next up, and finally in our enchantments, we have Zendikar's Royal, 3 colorless, 2 red, or 2 green, I should say. 3 and 2 green. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, put a 2/2 green elemental creature token onto the battlefield. Into our instance, I have 1 Might of the Masses. 1 green, target creature gets +1/+1 until the end of turn for each creature you control. A good way to really pump something up, at least temporarily. We have 1 Natural Connection, 2 in a green. Search your library for a basic land, put it onto the battlefield tapped, and shuffle your library. Good way to trigger landfall on your opponent's turns. 1 Naturalize, 1 in a green. Destroy target artifact or enchantment. So if somebody has a pesky artifact you want to get rid of, or an enchantment, you can just use this on it. We have 1 Outnumber. Outnumber deals damage to target creature equal to the number of creatures you control. We have 1 Predator's Howl, 3 in a green. Put a 2/2 green wolf token onto the battlefield. It also has Morbid, so put three of these tokens onto the battlefield if a creature died this turn. And basically, you just jump block with something, play this as an instant, get your 3 tokens, or even if it's doubling season perilous forays, you're going to be getting 12 tokens, maybe more. 1 Reclaim, 1 green, put target card from your graveyard on top of your library. Good way to reuse certain spells or get certain creatures back. 1 Solidarity of Heroes, 1 in a green, has the ability to pay its Strive cost, which is 1 in a green. Target creature gets its 1/1 counters doubled, and you can do that to as many creatures as you want as long as you can pay 1 in a green for each creature. We have 1 Tail Slash, 2 in a red. Target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to target creature you don't control. We have 1 Vitalize, 1 green, untap all creatures you control. And then we're going to move into our sorceries. I have 1 Chandra's Ignition, 3 colorless, 2 red. Target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to each other creature and each opponent. So basically, let's say you have something that's pretty powerful out. You use Xenagos' ability to double that, Chandra's Ignition on it to deal a massive amount of damage to everybody. This is a good way to end the game. We have 1 Jorga Invocation, 4 colorless, 2 green. Each creature you control gets 3/3 until the end of turn and must be blocked this turn if able. And also, if you have Bow of Nylea out, all those creatures are going to have Death Touch, so it's a good way to get rid of a lot of your opponent's creatures. We have 1 Nissa's Pilgrimage, 2 in a green. Search your library for up to 2 basic forest cards, reveal them, put 1 onto the battlefield tapped, and the rest into your hand, then shuffle your library. It also has Spell Mastery, so if there are 2 or more instants or sorceries in your graveyard, you can search your library for up to 3 basic forest cards. We have Nissa's Renewal, 5 in a green. Search your library for up to 3 basic land cards, put them onto the battlefield tapped, shuffle your library, and you gain 7 life. We have 1 Pergeneration, or Pergination, 3 in a green. Search your library for up to 2 basic lands, reveal them, and put 1 onto the battlefield tapped and the other into your hand. Shuffle your library and scry 1. We have 1 Sylvala's Charge, which is 4 in a green, has Parlay, so each player reveals the top card of their library. For each non-card revealed this way, I get a 3/3 green elephant creature token, and then each player also draws a card. And that is the deck. Let me know in the comments what you think of this deck. It's a pretty strong deck. I've had a lot of fun with it. Let me know if there's anything I should take out or add. Just list all that in the comments below. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe. I want to thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time. Take care.